The Fort Erie Podcast with Brent Jones. Brent Jones starts now.
Hey, that's me. I'm Brent Jones. Thanks for joining me. This is the Fort Erie Podcast, and today I've got two guests who will be joining me. First up, I'll be speaking with Stephanie Klauck, who's the owner and operator of The Creative Knitter in Ridgeway, and then later in today's episode, local author Derek Clendening will be joining me, and we'll discuss his latest series, Love and Justice. And I'll be getting to some Fort Erie news, some upcoming community events. I'll be playing your messages on the Byrd Box. But today is August 15th, 2023. At least that's the date that this episode is being released. Hopefully you're listening to it today, August 15th. You may or may not know that today is National Relaxation Day. There is one of these, I feel like one of these national days for just about everything. And today, it just happens to be National Relaxation Day. I did a quick Google search about this day, and one article here suggested that one of the best things you can do is take a few minutes to relax and listen to some calming music. Whether it's classical music, nature sounds, or simply your favorite song, music can help to ease our stress and relax our minds and bodies. So let's play some music here. Yeah, there we go. I mean, how do you feel, listeners? Are you starting to feel relaxed? I mean, you should. It's National Relaxation Day after all. Do you feel the tension leaving your body? Are your eyelids starting to get heavy? I'm kidding. Some of you might be driving right now. Please, I know a lot of people listen to podcasts while driving. Please don't doze off at the wheel listening to the Fort Erie Podcast. But anyway, another article I found here says National Relaxation Day was founded back in 1985 by somebody named Sean Moeller. I think I'm pronouncing that correctly. He was only a fourth grader at the time. Yeah, we let kids in elementary school apparently pick these national days. A fourth grader came up with National Relaxation Day, and he suggested back in 1985 that on this date, people should not do anything of any real value. I wonder if he would consider listening to this podcast something of real value. Hopefully he would. He also highlighted that real work, he called it, and cleaning are not parts of relaxation, meaning on National Relaxation Day, you should not do any real work and you should not do any cleaning. I couldn't agree with this kid more, but there you have it, folks. Take the day off. You have my permission. If you are driving to work right now, listening to this podcast, turn around and head home. This 9-year-old back in 1985 thought it was a good idea. As for me, I can't take the day off. I've got a show to do here. So let's kick things off with what's making news in Fort Erie.
News on the Fort Erie Podcast.
If you haven't heard, Bay Beach is unsafe for swimming at the moment due to an outbreak of E. coli. E. coli has plagued a number of beaches along Lake Erie this summer, including Bay Beach. You're still welcome to go. You can't swim and you're not supposed to drink the water, obviously. Another beach right here in town, Waverly Beach, that's on Lake Erie. It's also unsafe for swimming, but not due to E. coli. It's unsafe due to an outbreak of algae. If you want more information about our local beaches and what sort of swimmable condition they're in today, head on over to niagararegion.ca. The Black Creek Bridge on Niagara Parkway is scheduled to be rebuilt. It's going to be closed beginning November 20th and reopening April 26th next year. It's a 6-month project to rebuild this bridge, $3 million project. But a bit of good news, it's supposed to add an additional 18 inches of boat clearance. So how about that? For more information, if you want to know more about this project, contact Niagara Parks. I announced, I believe it was last episode, that this month, the month of August, I'm running what I'm calling a Green Acres 50-50-50 giveaway. And what this is I've purchased 3 gift cards worth $50 each to Green Acres Family Restaurant. So that's a total of $150 in gift cards. And I'm giving them away. If you want to find out how to win, I'm going to recap all of that at the end of today's episode. There's been a bit of debate on this podcast as well as on Facebook and around town regarding the new Dairy Queen location, where exactly that's supposed to be going. And according to some, let's call them developer plans, I've seen floating around Facebook, some very crude plans. It appears that yes, the Dairy Queen is going to be going into the Sobeys Plaza, but it's going to be a new building in that plaza that's going to be constructed at sort of the northeast corner of the parking lot, sort of across the street from Picard's Peanuts. That's where it's supposed to be going anyway. No news on when. I don't know if we're going to see it this year. I don't know how wise it is to open an ice cream chain in the dead of winter. So there isn't a whole lot of time this year, I don't think, to get this project going. The Brain Injury Association of Fort Erie is hosting a calendar fundraiser, which I believe they've done several times in the past. In this particular case, the association is facing a bit of a struggle paying back some federal emergency aid that they received. They are basically, you buy the calendar for like $10 and you get 30 chances to win all sorts of different prizes. Nice bottles of wine. I actually donated a bottle of wine to this cause as a prize. Things like $100 to the keg, a gift card. The grand prize is a trip for two via WestJet worth over $4,000. So if you want to purchase a calendar, get some tickets, call 905-871-7789. If you missed this story, at the end of July, a bit of obviously an unfortunate story, a teenager had to be forcibly extricated from his red Ford Mustang after hitting a tree on Niagara Parkway. The police arrived on scene around 1:40 in the morning. The driver was alone in the vehicle at the time, believed to be the only one involved, and sustained what looked to be life-threatening injuries. Anyone with information on this collision is being asked to contact the police. And you may have also heard that our town is directly contributing $3 million to the new South Niagara Hospital. Our mayor says that Fort Erie is close enough to the South Niagara site to directly benefit. So we've contributed $3 million. Niagara Falls is the only other regional municipality at this time that has directly put money into the hospital. Niagara Falls, however, has put in over $30 million.
It's Fort Erie's answering machine, the Byrd Box.
This is the Byrd Box. Welcome. It's Fort Erie's answering machine. You can call 24 hours a day. You can squawk about absolutely anything you'd like. Leave a message on any topic and I'll play them right here on the Fort Erie podcast. And as a quick reminder, for the month of August, every person who leaves a message on the Byrd Box automatically goes into a draw to win a $50 gift card to Green Acres Family Restaurant in Garrison Road, part of my August Green Acres 50-50-50 giveaway. More details on that coming up later in the episode. Now, let's start first here with a positive message. This caller had some nice things to say. Have a listen.
I just wanted to give a positive shout out, actually cowboy hats off to Ben Vandermeer at Monticello Farm. And the cowgirl and cowboys and volunteers.
Wait. What was that? What was that? You guys heard that, right? Was that a cowbell? Hang on, I'm just skipping back, but I want to play that part of the message again.
And the cowgirl and cowboys and volunteers for.
I'm pretty sure that was a cowbell. One more time.
Cowgirl and cowboys and volunteers for making the Ram Stevensville Rodeo such a huge success this year. From the children's games, the Canadian cowgirls, stunt riders, bull riders, bucking broncs, sorting games, the rescue pickup, the barrels, the poles, many food and clothing vendors, and can't forget the many bands. Mm-hmm. Can't wait for next year. Congrats, Ben and volunteers and cowboys, cowgirls for putting on such a great show again. Thank you.
Yeah, this is a great use of the Byrd Box, by the way, guys. I mean, I know the tagline I use is because the last four digits spell BYRD. I call it the Byrd Box, and I say call in and squawk about anything you want. Squawk like a bird. I think I'm being clever. Anyway, you can squawk about things. You can certainly share negative things, get things off your chest. You can rant about stuff. That's fine. But it's also great to call in with positive feedback. Things you see around town that that you enjoy, people that you appreciate. So great use of the message. As far as the Stevensville Ram Rodeo, I did not make it out to the Ram Rodeo this year, but I heard nothing but positive feedback from people who did go, and I saw a lot of very cool images and videos posted to social media. Looks like everybody who went had a blast. And then the second message is a short one. It's a question for me.
What would you be doing if you weren't selling real estate?
What would I be doing if I wasn't selling real estate? I think that there's sort of two answers to that question. If I wasn't selling real estate because I was independently wealthy, say I won the lottery, the answer is I would still be selling real estate. I wouldn't give up my license. I would continue to be a realtor, but I would probably make time for more passion projects. If you followed me online for any period of time, whether on TikTok or you've listened to this podcast, I think it's pretty clear that I like doing creative things. I'm going to be speaking later in the episode, as I mentioned, with local author Derek Clendening. And Derek knows, as do a number of people at Fort Erie Public Library, that for a period of time, I was writing and self-publishing fiction. I've self-published a couple of novels, and I would love to have more time to write. I think that would be great. But if the question is, I still have to work. I'm not independently wealthy, and I wasn't selling real estate. What else would I be doing? I don't know. That's a great question. I ask myself that all the time. I often joke, and me saying this out loud, this might land me in a bit of hot water, but I often joke with people that real estate is nobody's plan A. There's very few people, very few realtors I know that, from the time they were like a little boy or a little girl, they said, hey, when I grow up, I want to sell real estate. That doesn't happen very often. I've always been in sales sort of in one capacity or another, and real estate seemed like a logical transition for me. And I've thoroughly enjoyed my career in real estate thus far. So if I wasn't doing this, I don't know, I might look at something else that, that requires some degree of regulation, something like financial planning, financial advising. I might want to look at doing something like that. There was a brief period of time where just, for the complete sake of I don't know, exploring options. This is before I got into real estate, but there was a period of time where I was looking into what it takes to become like a licensed private investigator. Maybe TV just makes it look cool. I don't know, but I figure the client's paying you to, sit in your car and eat sunflower seeds and take pictures of cheating spouses, for divorce cases and stuff. I don't know. I mean, I think that's a job I could do. Sitting around, taking pictures, eating sunflower seeds, I could probably do all that. Sorry, caller. The answer I have for you is that I don't actually have a great answer. Real estate was not my plan A necessarily, but it's sort of the plan Z, if that makes sense. This is what I intend to be doing for a long time.
Have something you want to squawk about? Let the whole town know what's on your mind. Call the Byrd Box at 289-599-2973. That's 289-599-BYRD.
All right, I'm joined on the phone right now by Stephanie Klauck of The Creative Knitter. Stephanie, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm wonderful. Thank you for taking time to join me. I really appreciate that.
Absolutely.
So tell listeners who maybe are not familiar, what is The Creative Knitter?
So The Creative Knitter is a yarn store that is located in Ridgeway, right in the main plaza in between. Actually, it's all food and me and a hair salon. So there's a whole lot of food if you ever come to the store. I'm right in between Domino's and Subway. And we carry a ton of different yarn options for knitters and crocheters and notions and tools, knitting needles, crochet hooks, all the things that you need to kind of dive into the fiber arts community.
Well, I want to talk with you more about that because I'm going to concede my ignorance. I don't know a whole lot about knitting, crocheting, any of that sort of business. But with respect to the location, am I correct in thinking that originally you had an online store and then you moved to brick and mortar? Is that right?
Yep, that's exactly right. So actually, when I first started this company, I hand dye my own yarn, which means that I get bare yarn, has no color to it. I use acid dyes and I hand dye it all myself. So that's how I started. I was doing that on the side while working full time. So I opened my online store and just simply had that. And then just kind of a interesting chain of events happened that kind of led to me opening the brick and mortar store as well as doing my own yarn.
Were you one of those very brave, very daring people that opened during the pandemic?
I was, yes. We opened in October of 2021.
It's like everybody else was moving online at that time, and you're like, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to open a brick and mortar store.
Yeah, and everyone's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yep, I'm sure, I'm doing it.
Well, a couple of questions, because I'm curious about the product, but I'm also curious about the motivation for opening a retail storefront, because surely, that would create some additional overhead for you. But I guess on the plus side, people who are passionate about their different yarns and textiles would have a chance to experience them in person. So what was that all about?
So when I actually went looking for a space, I wasn't actually looking for a space to open anything retail related. I actually worked full time doing another job remotely from home. Also in the crafting industry. I've always been in the crafting industry, which is thus the name The Creative Knitter. And I was working for this company, doing like back end stuff. So it was like a lot of computer work, that type of stuff. And I was doing it from home. And I kind of got to a point where I didn't want to work from home anymore. And I wanted to find like a small office space that I could use so I could leave the house to do that work. And so that was kind of what was happening. I was looking at some spaces and I went into my current store location now, which used to be a pottery store. They used to do ceramics there. Mm-hmm. And I went in one Saturday by myself. I wanted to just paint a yarn bowl, which is something related to knitting. And I ended up having a conversation with the owner, and she let me know that they were actually letting go of the lease and they would be closing. And in my head, all of a sudden, I was like, wait a minute, this is a great location. Maybe I just want to open a store and like have my yarn and all the other yarn. So that's kind of how that came about. I went home. That was in August. I went home and said to my husband, I think I'm going to open a yarn store. And he kind of looked at me like, what? But expected it, because that's always been the way I roll. I get an idea and I run with it. And that was my idea in August, and we opened the doors in October.
Now, you're coming up on 2 years in business. I mean, how has the response been?
Amazing. So that is kind of the second part of the question you asked about, like kind of why. Once I got the idea to do it, the reason behind it was not so much my own brand, but it was when I first started knitting, which most people don't realize, I've only actually knit for 4.5 years. So I have not done this for a long time. I'm completely self-taught. I just one day decided I wanted to learn how to knit. That kind of went into me hand dyeing my own yarn. And something that I couldn't find was a community. I couldn't find anywhere to kind of meet up with people, to kind of hang out with people who had an interest in this. So that was the number one driving force behind me opening the actual store. The very first part of the store that I designed was the center area of the store. If anyone's been there, we have a fireplace, a couch, chairs, and that was the first part I designed because I really wanted a space where people could come, especially after all of the isolation of COVID, to sit and hang out and chat and just kind of spend time together.
That's wild, because that's not, no, I've not been in your store, but just thinking that, that's a very forward thinking way of doing things, to say, hey, there's other people who are passionate about this type of hobby, let's say, that would love to congregate and love to socialize with other people.
Yeah, and I mean, I didn't even know that these people existed. I just hoped that they did. I figured if I existed, there must be more. So I didn't even have a lot of a fiber community around me when I did this. And then since then, though, we have grown, and I have met some of my best friends now through the store.
That is such a cool story. I mean, that's
yeah.
I love community focused entrepreneurs. Now, with respect to the yarn, you mentioned dyeing your own yarns. Again, you're going to have to pardon my ignorance, but that sounds hard. Like, that sounds like an involved process.
It definitely is. It's definitely a physical job. It's a lot of big, huge, like soup style pots that you use to dye the yarn. So it's a lot of carrying heavy pots. So it's a very physical job, but it's also a creative one, which is what literally fuels my soul. If I can do something creative, then I'm all for it. So it lets me experiment with color and different fibers and all the things like that. And I don't do it as much as I did when I first opened the store, just because now I have the store to focus on as well. But I definitely still do it and hope to continue to do it for a long time.
What are the hours at the store?
We are open every day except for Monday, so that's the one day that we're closed. We are open 10 to 5, Tuesday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Thursday is our long day, so we're open 10 until 8. I like to have an evening where people can come after work, and that's also our social night, which I'll get to in a sec. And Sundays we're open 10 to 3.
And did you want to elaborate on the social night? Because I am curious about the gatherings. Are these at fixed times, or people can just drop by and start knitting anytime, or how does that work?
So we have scheduled times. So Thursday nights from 6 until 8 is I like to call it a maker's meetup. I don't like to call it knit night because it's not just for knitters. It's also for crocheters, if you want to embroider, any of the things. So I don't like to make a specific name. So we like maker's meetup. We do that 6 to 8 on Thursdays. And we also just started one on Fridays from 2 to 4. That one's a little bit quieter right now. I think probably because it's the summer and everyone's out enjoying the sun and not necessarily wanting to knit woolly sweaters. And then we also, people are always welcome to just pop in. That's what the couch is for. We have a classroom area set up in the front with a table, and we have groups of ladies that will come, make a day trip of it, get their lunch at one of the many food options in the plaza, have their lunch in the front room, and then come and sit and knit together in the couch area. And then we also have scheduled classes that we do throughout the month, and those vary every single month. And
for somebody who wants to learn about the classes, would they look that up online?
Yep, we have so I have a full website. Everything in store is shared on the website. So we have every single item that's in the store is also there, as well as all of the information. The website is actually undergoing a huge redo right now. So the new website should hopefully be up this week coming, but the existing one is there and all of the information is there, easy to find.
Yeah. And what's the URL?
It is thecreativeknitter.com.
Thecreativeknitter.com. Well, for everybody listening, I'm going to let you in on a secret. By the time you listen to this episode and this interview, I'm pretty sure the website has been totally revamped. So check out thecreativeknitter.com. The timing is going to be perfect. I can almost assure you. But now you're active on social too, right?
Yep, we have. We're on Instagram. That's where I'm most active. That's the one that I kind of prefer. I think everyone kind of has a preference, either Instagram or Facebook. I do both, but Instagram is definitely where I'm stronger. I'm on there a lot more.
Okay. And I wanted to come back to something I started asking you about earlier, because you mentioned how involved the process is of dyeing your own yarns. Now, for somebody like me who doesn't know any different, the types of yarns you carry, are these, say, higher quality products than I would find in a department store, or what, maybe can you speak a little bit to the products you carry, particularly the ones that you are sort of customizing yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So not necessarily better quality. I mean, we definitely have higher end yarns. One of the main things that I focus on in my store is affordability for everybody and what everyone might like. So I don't kind of focus on one specific thing, because everyone is different. Everyone has a different price point, and I want anyone who walks into my store to be able to find something that will work for them, whether it be budget or what they're needing for their project. So we carry a small amount of acrylic. We don't carry a lot for fiber people. They'll kind of get the gist of what the different fibers are. That's a lower end fiber just because it's a man-made fiber. So it's not like a wool but that's a well-loved fiber because it's great for kids' knits and blankets and stuff like that. So we go right from an acrylic right to baby alpaca. We have a yarn that actually has camel in it. We have a ton of different wool options. That's our main thing that we carry. So it ranges from one end of the spectrum to the other. Now, for my own specific yarn, that typically tends to be merino wool. For our sock yarn, merino wool with nylon. Sock knitters will know that you like to have a little bit of strength in your yarn when you're knitting any type of sock garment. So that's typically what I specialize in. So yeah, we literally have a little bit of everything for everyone's taste.
And I just learned something new, because I had no idea there were yarns that came from camel. I did not know that.
Yeah, there is. Yep.
It's amazing what you can learn in 4.5 years, eh?
Exactly.
How did you said 4.5 years. I mean, how did you get into knitting, crocheting? I mean, how'd you get involved?
Just one day, as per how I am and have always been in my life, I just decided, that looks like a hobby I want to try. I've done everything under the sun, from card making to scrapbooking to macrame to everything that you can think of. And I just decided one day I wanted to learn how to knit. I went to, at that time, Michael's, because that was the only yarn store I knew of around here, grabbed some yarn and went on YouTube and just started to learn. My first project was not very good. It was a toque and a scarf combination. The hat had to be seamed, and you could visibly see the seam, but I loved it. I still have photos of me wearing that first little ensemble that I made, and I loved it. I tried crochet. I found it very hard, so I kind of put that on the back burner and just did knitting. And then once the knitting was figured out, I went back to crochet, and now I'm actually the crochet teacher. So Never say never. If you put your mind to something and you want to do it bad enough, you can learn and do anything.
So is that how most people get into it? They want to try it out, and then they jump on a YouTube tutorial. Do you find that's like a pretty common path people take?
Not really, at least not in my experience from customers at the store. A lot of customers have either just done it for a very long time because their mom did it and their grandma did it, and then they were taught, and then they just have always done it. And then the ones that don't do it yet and want to learn typically like the classroom environment, or at least the one-on-one and the personal aspect of being taught by someone in person. I actually learn better the way I learned, so I learn better where I can pause the video and practice a little bit. But people generally prefer to come in and do one-on-one classes or in a classroom setting.
That's interesting. Okay. And so I imagine it's a pretty broad answer, but can you generalize who is your typical customer?
Actually, you're right. It ranges from, I have teenagers that come in and they typically are wanting to make fun, funky garments, or amigurumi, which is a mouthful, but that means the little crocheted animals and characters that a lot of people see these days that has the name amigurumi. So that's a very popular one. And then it ranges right into, We have men that come into the store, so it's not just women. We have some great male clientele. They love doing the craft as well, and we go right up through the years. As I think my oldest customer is in her 80s.
Wow. Okay. It's soothing. It's soothing, isn't it? It's like, when people are knitting or crocheting, I mean, they make a beautiful product, but a lot of it is like repetitive. And do you find that's like does it have a calming effect on people?
Absolutely. That's actually part of, like, I suffer from a little bit of anxiety, and I think during COVID, a lot of us did. And actually during COVID, there was kind of like a knitting and crochet boom. It became very popular again. People needed something to do at home. They needed to keep their hands busy. That's typically what I'm like. I can't just sit and watch a movie. I have to be doing something with my hands. So it's a great thing to take up if you need to just kind of relax your mind and keep your hands busy and be able to kind of move around with it, because it's easily able to kind of go with you. I knit in the car. I knit in a restaurant. I knit everywhere.
And is there anything else that you want listeners to know?
Just don't be afraid. If you don't, if it interests you, anything. It doesn't even have to be what I specialize in here at the store. But if, there's a crafty thing you want to do, I firmly believe that creativity really fuels the soul. It's just a way for you to express yourself. And what you make doesn't have to be perfect. You just need to enjoy the process of it. And it really, I find, is just a wonderful way to just find something that fuels your soul and just kind of brings happiness to you that you might not expect would.
Community events coming up in Fort Erie.
There's a handful of events coming up over the next week or so that I thought I would mention on the Fort Erie podcast, happening tomorrow, Wednesday, August the 16th. There's going to be a real estate investor meetup. I have nothing to do with this, by the way. This is being hosted by Geertz Capital Investment at Happy Jack's restaurant. It starts at 7 o'clock p.m. It says everyone's welcome to join us for a casual meetup of beginner to advanced real estate investors of any discipline. No pitches, no presentations. Bit of a red flag to me, but anyway, if that sounds like something you might like to check out, be my guest. Then Thursday, August 17th, the Fort Erie Public Library, specifically the Crystal Ridge location, is hosting a robotics workshop. This should be a lot of fun. It's aimed at kids ages 6 through 10, so if you think your young one has some interest in robotics, that gets going, at 10 o'clock a.m. Saturday, August 19th, you can catch a performance from Dylan Deviney at Brimstone Brewing Company. Dylan is a 19-year-old singer, songwriter, and guitarist from right here, like locally here in Ridgeway. This will be his debut appearance at Brimstone Brewing Company. There's no admission, and they make sure to point out in the advert that the beer will be cold, so that's always a positive. Sunday, August 20th at 1 o'clock p.m., you can catch a workshop called The Art of Breathing being held by Evolve Fitness Fort Erie. That's going on from 1 until 3:30 p.m. It's a 2.5-hour workshop. It talks about learning by sensing and experiencing using the Feldenkrais method and current theories of breathing. I have no idea what that means, but looks like it costs a boatload of money. If you want to gain admission there, contact Evolve Fitness Fort Erie and collect some details from them. Sunday, August 20th at 1:30 p.m., 1:30 until 4, Taste of Cuba barbecue is happening at Old Fort Erie. It looks like this is a ticketed event, $15, something like that for the tickets. For more info or to get a ticket, you can contact Dave at 905-382-3468. And it says here the funds raised will support scholarships for Niagara residents, joining educational tours to Cuba, and in support of a school for special needs children in Cuba. So, sounds like a good cause. Friends of Crystal Beach Waterfront Park Summer Concert. That is a mouthful. Let me just summarize. Stonewall is performing at the Crystal Beach Waterfront Park this Sunday from 7 until 9 p.m. They play classic rock. Bring a chair, bring a blanket. There's no alcohol, no vaping allowed. And just in conclusion, Fort Erie, are you a fan of horoscopes? Do you believe in horoscopes? Do you like the stars and the moon and all that good stuff to align to make your life a happier, better place? I'm only asking because I don't believe in any of it. I'm going to share my horoscope with you later today. First, I'm going to do a little ranting and raving. Then I'm going to get to my conversation with Derek Clendening. And then I'm going to conclude today's episode talking about the Aries horoscope for the month of August. And I'll share my honest thoughts.
Ranting and Raving on the Fort Erie podcast.
For this edition of Ranting and Raving, I want to talk about NIMBYs. And if you haven't heard that term before, NIMBY, it's an acronym. It stands for Not in My Backyard, NIMBY. These are the folks who talk a big game when it comes to supporting virtually anything. But when it actually comes to the rubber meeting the road, when it comes time to build or develop or do something, they say, hey, not in my backyard, not on my street, not in my neighborhood, not in my town. A simple example might be something like the legalization of recreational cannabis. Overwhelming broad public support for that legislation, except unfortunately, when it came time to actually start setting up shop, you had a lot of folks saying, well, I don't want cannabis stores in my neighborhood or not in this area or not anywhere near my home, not in my backyard. The NIMBYs came out in full force. Okay. Same thing when it comes to new housing developments, new subdivisions, affordable housing. Lots of people every election talking a big game about, we need more affordable housing. Our young people need to be able to buy a home. We have to lower housing costs. All of this chatter until it comes time to actually build or develop something. And then people come flocking out of the woodwork. Not in my backyard. An example I think of, like for environmental reasons, the folks who oppose the development of Waverly Woods, and that's been going on for years. There's immediate pushback. There was immediate pushback, I should say, or at least public outcry about the Keystone Kelly's building being knocked down at Central and Garrison to make way for a condo development. This happened years ago, of course, and this was all for nostalgia. People loved Keystone Kelly's. The only problem was Keystone Kelly's that building had been abandoned for years and years. It was an eyesore. It was a good thing when that place got knocked down, whether condos get built there or not. But again, people were very upset. Keystone Kelly's was gone. Same thing happened when the Thunder Bay Snack Bar was demolished to make way for housing. So I'll give you an example. All right. And this happened a couple of weeks ago. A neighbor of mine, and I'm not trying to throw my neighbor under the bus, by the way. I like him. He's a great guy. But he comes up to me because I'm the real estate guy in my neighborhood. And he's very concerned about a new subdivision that's being built near us. The developers had applied to the town for a number of variances with respect to the minimum frontage, the setbacks, the density allowed under the zoning, if they could build more dense housing like townhouses, that type of thing. And he says to me, my neighbor says, Brent, we got to put a stop to this. We got to go to town hall. We got to fight back. We can't have this built here. And I'm going like, why, man? Like, why would we do that? I think it's great. He's like, Brent, pretty soon Ridgeway is going to start to look like Mississauga. Which I always think it's funny when people say that. There's like 12,000 people in Ridgeway and like 1.2 million, give or take, in Mississauga. It's going to take us a while to start looking like Mississauga, I think. But he says, Brent, I can't even get a spot at the post office. When I go to the post office downtown, you can't even find a place to park. Why do we need more homes here, more people? Now, look, Canada Post, the post office downtown Ridgeway, yeah, they might have to move at some point. It is getting crowded down there. I don't deny that point, but I don't think our relative proximity to the post office is a good reason to deny people housing. And for context, like I live on a fairly nice street. Homes in my neighborhood, if I go back and look at the records when they were new builds, 12 and 14 years ago, those homes were selling in like the 300s, the mid 300s. That's what it took to buy a new build in Ridgeway just 12 or 14 years ago. Today, homes in my street, in my neighborhood, are now selling for $700,000, $800,000, $900,000 and more. Like really stop and think about that. How is that possible? How is it possible you bought a new build, say 12 or 14 years ago for $300,000 and today you can sell it for $950,000? Like, I always think about this in the context of having a daughter, having a child of my own. She's one. One day she's going to want to buy a house. Or if she doesn't want to buy a house, she's at least going to want to find somewhere she can, afford to rent. Why would I oppose new development? Why would I oppose homes for the next generation? And this is what I mean by NIMBYs. It's like rules for thee, but not for me. Hey, I was able to buy a house at a price that I could afford, just say 10 years ago, but I don't think other people should have the luxury of being able to do the same thing. Like, make no mistake, all right? The real estate market is governed by supply and demand. When there's more supply, it lessens demand, it lowers prices. So when I say that we have a housing crisis, when I say there's a high amount of demand and a relatively low amount of supply, the only real long-term solution to fix this is to build more homes. That is the only way to fix this. Unless a whole bunch of people want to up and move out of Canada, that's the only way to fix it. If we're all going to stay, if our population is going to continue to grow at that, we need more homes. So I've got a clip here I'm going to play from our federal opposition leader, Pierre Poilievre. And by the way, I'm going to play it. I don't care if you love or hate this man. I really don't care. I understand he's not everybody's cup of tea. That's not the point. For the purposes of today's ranting and raving, I just want you to listen to the solution that he proposes. Take the politics out of it and just listen for a sec.
The answer is we actually don't have enough apartment buildings. And so there's not enough competition. If there were more apartments, you go to your landlord and say, if you jack up the rent, I'm out. I'm going to go to move down the street or move to the next town over. But the problem is in Canada, last year, our population grew by 1 million people, and we built about 200,000 homes. We need 1 home for every roughly 2 people. So, in other words, we would need to house 1 million people. We need at least 500,000 new homes every year. We're building not even half of that.
So the thing is, regardless of your political stripes, what Pierre has said here, on this particular issue, he is exactly right. Because when you talk about affordable housing, usually the first thing people think of is government subsidizing the building of new homes, or they think of governments intervening and keeping rents artificially low. And I understand there may be a need for some of that. I'm not against it. But what I am saying is that it's a Band-Aid solution. When you have people paying artificially low rent, that might help in the short term, but it does nothing to address the bigger picture, which is that the cost of housing is still very high. It's a bit like the grocery rebate that some people received this summer. Were those additional funds welcomed? Yeah, certainly. I mean, a family that's struggling to feed themselves, I'm sure, was very happy to receive that grocery rebate from the federal government. But the problem is, once that money is gone, groceries are still expensive. It didn't do anything to address the core issue. And when I say the issue, let me quantify that, because we have about 14 million housing units across Canada. So I'm talking rentals, apartments, detached houses, all of it, about 14 million housing units across the country. According to the CMHC, and so this is not some guy's blog or a post I saw on Facebook. This is coming from the Canada Mortgage and Housing Corporation. Okay, they write on their website, we project that if current rates of new construction continue, the housing stock will increase to close to 19 million housing units by the year 2030. Well, that sounds like good news, right? We got 14 million roughly right now. In another 6-7 years, we should be up to 19 million. Great news. Except they go on to say, to restore affordability, we project that Canada will need an additional 3.5 million units by 2030. Meaning even when we have 19 million housing units, it's not enough. Even with 19 million, we would need 22.5 million homes in this country by 2030 to restore some semblance of affordability. So, if you truly want affordability, please understand it's a long-term solution. It's not one government at one level subsidizing some homes on a means test or, for this group or for that group. No. If you want true housing affordability, the only correct long-term solution is going to require building homes, and building more homes. Now, that's my take. If you don't agree with my opinion, as always, you are welcome to call the Byrd Box. You can respectfully state your opinion and why you disagree with me. The number's 289-599-2973. But I'll conclude with this. NIMBYs just need to get out of the way. All right. If you are a NIMBY, if you are that person not in my backyard, get out of the way. Otherwise, my kids, your grandkids, well, I guess all I can say is I hope you bought a home big enough to house 3 or 4 generations.
The Fort Erie Podcast.
All right. I have local author Derek Clendening on the phone. Derek, how you doing?
I'm good. How are you, Brent?
Hey, man, I'm doing great. And I really appreciate you making some time to talk with me today.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, I think a lot of listeners may know you first and foremost from Fort Erie Public Library. So I certainly want to talk about your writing today. But how long have you been at the library?
Officially 19 years, but I also work there as a page. So my service there goes back over 20 years.
Wow. Okay, I didn't realize it was that long.
Oh yeah.
Did you grow up in Fort Erie?
Yes, I did.
Oh, you did. Okay. Mm-hmm. So you grew up in Fort Erie, at the Fort Erie Public Library. What do you think makes our community such a great place to be?
I think it's always been a fairly intimate community where people tend to know each other better.
Mm-hmm.
That's not always the case in small towns. I mean, my in-laws live in a town much smaller than Fort Erie, but I wouldn't say that, do people know each other all that well? Well, not necessarily. But here, it seems like everybody knows each other. I mean, I grew up in a neighborhood where everyone really did know each other. We've lost that a little bit, at least in my neighborhood over the years. But I can remember being a kid and thinking, when I look back on it, that was pretty special.
I do a section on this show, a segment called the Byrd Box, where people call in, leave a message about anything they want, totally up to them. And I'll play the messages on the podcast. And I've had a couple of folks who are new to town who've called in and reported that, even though they don't know anybody getting here, they feel like they're greeted everywhere in public as if people have known them their whole life.
Oh, wow. Well, that's great to hear.
For me, as my wife and I moved here 9 years ago, we fell in love with this town. We think it's great. And sometimes there are people who've been here their whole life that, they call it Fort Dreary. They make, it's not like it used to be. That group, it's like the group where it's like this town can do nothing right.
Yeah, I honestly, I never understood that attitude about the town. Never did. I've always actually been pretty positive about the town personally.
Yeah, me too. Oh. I guess there's some people always find a reason to complain, right?
Oh yeah, that could be. That Fort Dreary thing is an age-old thing. My God.
Yeah. It's like we don't have slots at the racetrack anymore, so everything's falling to pieces.
Yeah.
I actually find sometimes you can gauge the quality of a small town by its library.
Yeah, sure.
It's when there's investment into the library and there's good people like yourself working there, you can usually tell it's like, hey, this is a good place that you want to be.
Yeah, and libraries, I hope, for those who don't know, just how pivotal a role that libraries play in the community, or that they really ought to. And, I had a boss there years ago who used to say, I think it was his father would say that libraries are the poor man's university. And, libraries always need to change and evolve to meet certain needs within the community. And that's something I've seen over the years working there, is just the way it has changed and evolved. And it's really in response to the ever-changing needs of the community.
And you do a number of different programs there, workshops, writing workshops. Like, what other kind of stuff are you involved in at the library?
Well, I do some of the local history there.
Okay.
And I write columns every once in a while. I also run a Fort Erie Public Library writers group.
Okay.
And that meets on the second Tuesday of every month at 6 p.m. at the Centennial Branch.
At the Centennial Branch. Okay, got it.
Yeah.
Now, for somebody who's maybe interested in saying, hey, I want to come out second Tuesday, 6 p.m., do they have to have previous experience writing? Do they,
No, not at all. It's open to really anyone and everyone. I mean, I've had folks come who have written a lot. I've had folks come who haven't written yet, but they want to. This kind of, it fits people of every level of experience, I think.
Well, and you've been writing for some time. I mean, I was looking at your catalog online a little bit, and it looks to me like and it's predominantly fiction, right? I mean, I didn't see any nonfiction titles, so you write fiction.
The vast majority of it, yeah.
Okay, and how long have you been writing? I guess you're probably going to say your whole life, but let's say how long have you been writing, let's say, novels or even young adult fiction? How far back does that go?
The young adult fiction, well, the first young adult book I would have written, I didn't set out to write it as a young adult book. I wrote it just to write it as a book generally. And this is before a lot of what's known as young adult today really took off as its own genre. Mm-hmm. And so you would call it a YA book now, so you'd say well over 20 years ago.
Really? So you've actually been writing longer than you've been at the library?
Yeah.
And are you completely, like, are you self-published or?
You could say that I'm hybrid in a way, because I've published traditionally, I've published independently as well.
So you've done both. Okay. What's the distinction, maybe for listeners who aren't familiar? Why would some titles say be traditionally published and some are self-published?
Some books they become independently published because maybe the market, for a big book, like the big publishers, they might just not feel like there's a market for it, or it's very neat. Mm-hmm. And so you may go the self-publishing route. A lot of self-publishers these days, if you are like an influencer or something, you could actually really make a good go of it because you have a platform. You have an audience in front of you. So for people like that, self-publishing may make more sense.
Well, for listeners who maybe aren't familiar with your work, what are some of either your most recent titles, most recent series that they could I assume, look up online or learn more about at the library. But can you share with us some of your most recent work?
I am writing a serialization right now. It's called the Love and Justice series. It's an LGBT young adult romance set in the Old West during a zombie apocalypse. It has a little bit of everything.
I feel like you checked a lot of boxes there. It's
yeah.
So what would when you say young adult? I mean, this is aimed sort of at what age groups?
I think it's the type of story that anybody would want to read, because a lot of adults read young adult fiction.
Of course.
It's very common. Oh yeah. So, let's put it this way: the character is about 17 to 18 years old, and you see the perspective of the story. Their world is told through their story. They tell their own story, right? But it is the point of view of a younger person.
Point of view of a younger person. Got it. Okay. And so for somebody who wants to get in, say, hey, I want to check out Derek's series. I mean, are there like print versions available at the library, or does somebody need to go say purchase on Amazon, or how, through Kindle?
It's only on Amazon at the moment.
It's on Amazon. Okay, got it. And so how easy is it for somebody to find your work on Amazon? Do they just type in Derek Clendening and then it all comes up from there?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So what for a younger person maybe who's reading some of your work and saying, hey, I really feel like I'd like to try writing a novel, what advice would you have for them?
I tell them to just go ahead and do it and not be afraid. Sometimes they tell you, don't be afraid of the blank page. I remember being a teenager trying to write stories, and I look back on the things I was trying to write, and I think, oh my gosh, did I ever write that? And but I had to be young once. I had to be new to writing, at some point. And you have to be unafraid to write a story maybe that isn't that great, because you're just beginning.
Well, sure.
Well, I say that only because it's like people might worry that, like, oh, I don't know if it's going to be any good. Well, you can't be afraid of that sort of thing. You have to go ahead and do it.
Yeah, and you're obviously familiar with this, and a lot of listeners to the Fort Erie podcast, I suspect, are not. But I have written and self-published, novels, short stories, a sort of a serial thriller, and the Fort Erie Public Library, yourself included, were always very supportive of my work and what I did. But I fully acknowledge today, looking back, the first novel that I self-published was most certainly not my best work. It's like you got.
And I didn't mean that in a really pejorative way. It's just that, like, I think sometimes people may worry, like, oh, they may just worry it's not any good. They may be too hard on themselves. And it's just it's like trying to learn how to play the guitar. You might not be great at it at first, but just keep doing it.
You got to take the first step at some point, right?
That's right, and then you learn.
Yeah, you can't write the second novel until you wrote the first, and you hope the second's going to be better than the first. So you just got to start.
Well, I think a newer writer hasn't had feedback yet either.
Well,
they don't know what they're writing, if it works or not, in the eyes of your common reader.
When you self-publish, you put something on Amazon, and you start seeing those reviews coming in, either there or Goodreads. You find out what's working and what's not working pretty quick, eh?
You can, in terms of what the actual reader, the ones who actually bought the story. Yeah, you get an idea, and you can, if you see a certain pattern, you begin to understand why that's a problem or why something is good.
Right. And
in other ways, not necessarily to do with reviews, but anytime I've worked with a beta reader, if someone read something that I know that person, a lot of the same things come up. Or if I send something and I get a rejection, and maybe every once in a while you'll get some personal comments back on it, and sometimes they're saying the same thing. That is, well, then you understand that those are areas to work on.
It's like I see a bit of a trend developing here.
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, I have my own, and I know what they are, and like sometimes I may use the same word twice in two different, two sentences side by side a lot. And there are other just little things that I tend to do in my own writing where I really have to watch that because for whatever reason I just have a long-standing pattern of doing that. And it's just little things.
Everybody's got their own little ticks. How do you handle criticism though? When somebody outright, has something, I don't want to say offensive, but when somebody has like harsh feedback, does that ever happen? And like, how do you?
No one ever wants to see reviews like that, I guess. But I guess every once in a while, maybe something bothered me, but for the most part, no. The last time I got something it wasn't even that it was that bad. It was that the reader had said something like about how great it is, except for pointing out something that I thought, I know that's actually not, they misunderstood something about the story. Mm-hmm. And it's like, it felt like a bit of more of like a backhanded compliment. Even this glaring problem couldn't take away from the fact that I really like this story.
Well, that's nice.
One of those.
That's not so bad.
That was an interesting one. I've had a few that were like, yeah, that was interesting. I don't read them a lot, but I have, I do look on Goodreads every once in a while, or Amazon. And actually, I had one, and I hadn't seen it. It was actually posted years before, and I didn't see it for probably at least 5-6 years. Was that the book made them cry?
In a good way or a bad way?
Geez, I didn't think it was that bad. No, it was in a good way. Apparently, it was so. I think it was so emotional for them that they cried. Wow, that's really flattering.
Yeah, that's very, very cool. It's an odd thing when you go, yeah, I like making people cry, but hey, maybe.
Well, if you can tug at the heartstrings a little bit and do it the right way, you can certainly capture the reader.
You've always, I don't like to use the word artsy because it sounds condescending, but I mean, you're probably best known as a local author. Certainly you've done some art before as well. I guess, mm-hmm. Painting principally was your medium.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so I think you mentioned before, you're not doing a ton of painting now, but what kind of things would you paint? How'd you get into painting? Do you have any formal training on that?
I got into painting because of my grandmother, who was best known as a local artist.
Okay.
That's what she did. And she did oil paintings. I think there's actually something on her at the Fort Erie Museum.
Is it really?
I think so. I'd have to double check on that, but I believe that there were at least plans for it. But yeah, she was a local artist, and I used to sit in her studio with her, and I would watch her paint, and spent a lot of time doing that. And always, I was always kind of curious about the process, even as a little kid. Like, how do you start a painting? How does she decide when it's done? And there are so many things about it, just watching her. Maybe it's because she was losing herself in a different world when she was doing that. And, there was just so much to it that, it was, she just lived right down the lawn from me, actually. So I could just wander on down there any old time and see her in her studio in the back room.
And a lot of the painting you do, at least the work that I've seen, has been different stuff from around Fort Erie. That's principally what you painted, yeah?
No, I painted a lot of stuff.
Oh, did you? Okay.
I painted a lot of celebrities and athletes. I have a lot of those paintings signed too.
Where are all these paintings? Where could somebody go to see them?
I have them.
Like they have to come to your house?
It's not a gallery. I don't have people in to look at them or anything like that. But I'm actually looking at a signed painting of Christopher Sarandon right now.
Are you really?
Got hanging up. Yeah. It was actually from Fright Night.
Okay. Well, what's just in kind of wrapping things up here, what would be your message to say other, whether aspiring or current artists, authors around town, people that have, they feel the itch, they want to pursue something creative and they haven't taken the first step. Are there any words you'd have for those people?
You're not the only person that's out there aspiring to write. When I was younger, I don't think I really knew anybody my own age that, to my knowledge, that had the writing it like that. And so I thought, am I the only one? And I didn't know any writers. So yeah, I was kind of surprised later on when I realized just how many people out there are trying to write stories. And they, they meet at writers group and things of that nature. So I would definitely encourage anyone listening who, they don't know other writers. Well, we have writers group, at the Fort Erie Public Library. And that's a great way to meet other writers. And that's actually the way I did it. There was a group that met there when I was around 18 or 19. And I would go to that, and that's where I started meeting other writers for the first time.
And did you find that help, like that camaraderie? You talk to people that are having the same challenges, the same struggle, the same writer's block?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And later on, when I started going to writers' conventions around, the United States and everything, I found that there's like even more of the camaraderie when you get into the specific genres.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's considerable. And going to see those people actually helps you recharge your batteries too, because anybody I know would tell you they go to one of those things and they come back home feeling energized to get back to writing.
You're listening to the Fort Erie Podcast.
If you want to check out some of Derek's writing, his Love and Justice series, that's the most current series he's working on. Book 4 just came out. It's available as an ebook, a Kindle ebook on Amazon. You can search for Derek Clendening, or the title itself, it's called Pride Goes Before the Fall. And of course, you can also join Derek at the Fort Erie Public Library. That's the Centennial Branch, the second Tuesday of every month for his writers group, which kicks off at 6 p.m. Now, if writing is less your thing and you more prefer knitting or crochet, well, make sure to head over to the Creative Knitter in Ridgeway. Say hi to Stephanie Klauck, and you can also, of course, follow Stephanie and the Creative Knitter on social media. Don't forget that my Green Acres 50-50-50 giveaway is going on this month, all month long. 3 different $50 gift cards to Green Acres Family Restaurant you can win. The first way is to go to theforteriepodcast.com, click the giveaway link at the top of the page, enter your first name and email. You'll go into a draw the first week of September. The second $50 gift card, all you have to do is leave a message on the Byrd Box. Again, it's a draw. First week of September, everyone who left a message on the Byrd Box in the month of August will automatically go into that draw and could win the second $50 gift card. The number's 289-599-2973. And the third $50 gift card that I'm giving away, we're going to find out who wins next week, because I've got 2 people lined up to play Fort Erie Trivia on the next episode of the Fort Erie Podcast. So we're going to see who wins that third $50 gift card. Now, I thought I would wrap up today's episode by, I don't know if poking fun is the right word, but I've always just been sort of tickled by horoscopes. Like when somebody tells me that, oh, that's so typical behavior of you, Brent, because you're an Aries. And it's like, it's very odd that we've done away with some of these horrible traditions of prejudging people based on what we see on the surface. But somehow the alignment of the stars, we still seem to find that an acceptable method for passing judgment on other people. So at least that's how I see it. I pulled up a thing here for the month of August, the Aries horoscope or calendar for the month. Now, I'm going to give, I haven't read through this yet. I pulled it up and I wanted to do just sort of a blind reaction to it here on the podcast. So it breaks things down into 5 categories: career, finances, health, relationships, and personal growth. So let's start with career. According to this article, it says, Aries are typically ambitious and driven, and the moon in August can help you to focus your energy on your career goals. You may be more likely to take on new challenges or to start your own business. I mean, this is so vague. It's so deliberately vague. I don't even know what to say with that. I mean, the moon apparently is going to help me to focus my energy on my career goals. Well, that's good. That's good because, being in real estate, I generally find myself focused on my career goals most days. But if the moon this month is going to give me a little extra boost, I'll take it. The next one says finances. The moon in August can also have a positive impact on your finances. You may be more likely to make wise investments or to receive unexpected financial windfalls. Well, again, I mean, I'll take it. If the moon this month wants to send me, because I just happen to be born in the month of April, if the moon wants to send me some money this month, I'll take it. I'll provide the moon with my PayPal email here right after the show. Health, it says the moon in Virgo is a sign of healing and purification, so you can expect to experience some inner transformation during this time. You may be more likely to eat healthy foods, to exercise regularly, and to get enough sleep. Boy, oh boy. This horoscope does not know me at all. I'm just going to leave it at that. Healthy foods, exercise regularly, get enough sleep. I don't know that any of those 3 things describe me. Relationships. The moon in August can also bring positive changes to your relationships. You may be more likely to attract stable and supportive partners. Well, what this horoscope may not realize is that I'm already happily married. I'm not looking to attract any new partners, supportive or otherwise, but nice of them to think that I've got that riz, as the kids call it. And then lastly, personal growth. The moon in August is a time for personal growth and transformation. You may be more introspective and reflective during this time, and you may also be more open to new experiences. I mean, that part's cool with me. If for whatever reason this time of the year I'm more open to new experiences, I think that's a positive thing. But if you are on the hunt for personal growth, I'd recommend tossing the horoscopes in the garbage, maybe. I don't believe that the sun and the moon and the stars are the path for most people. Maybe there's exceptions, but for most people to achieve real personal growth. Anyway, that was the episode for today, episode number 64. Thank you for listening to the Fort Erie podcast. Be sure to subscribe to this show wherever it is you get your podcasts, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or you can stream it right at theforterieriepodcast.com. And I will catch you again coming up in episode 65.
You've been listening to the Fort Erie podcast with your host, Brent Jones. Never miss an episode. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or visit theforteriepodcast.com.